morning, everyone. My name is Rick Bantelman. I'm the VP of Sales at MyWorkDrive. And as we do from time to time, we're going to do a update on our Anytime webinar, where you can see the latest and greatest on our version 6. So again, you'll be able to access on demand, and we'll make this available shortly after this presentation. So a little bit about MyWorkDrive. What are we? Again, this presentation is geared for both new people that don't know anything about MyWorkDrive and current customers as far as the update. And we'll structure it so that the new people, they'll just think, okay, this is what it is. But the people that are current customers will see the new exciting features we've added. So let's talk about a few of our customers. We have actually huge customers, entire country. We have things like United Way, Metropolitan, all of these. You can see all of these. So we're across the board: commercial, education, government. And there you go, nonprofits. And here we are. I am on the left, and I'll be doing I am doing the beginning of the presentation. Dan Gordon is our CEO and co-founder. He'll be doing part of it. And Scott Miller is our director of engineering. So all three of us will be participating, and they'll keep me honest if I take you down a path that where I'm saying something that's more salesy than I should say. So for today, what are we going to do? MyWorkDrive. Why MyWorkDrive? Client-side demo, which I will do. And we'll break from there and go to the server side, where Scott Miller will take over. And then Dan will talk a lot about guest user sharing, which is one of our new features in version 6. And we'll talk about Teams a little bit. That's another addition we have, Teams integration. So secure file share remote access. That's really what we are. If I were to meet you in an elevator, that's what I would say. We provide secure remote access to your network shares where they live. And no migration, no anything. So when you actually install the MyWorkDrive server, we're just a configuration server. Your files live where they live, and that makes us compliant all over the place. We'll talk more about that later. Web browser, map drive, mobile, Teams, those are all the things that I will show. And then MyWorkDrive security features: Duo, two-factor, ADFS, SAML, no compromising files, no data left behind. Kind of a corny expression, but it makes a lot of sense. File type blocking and alerting. We have that. That's for our map drive, actually across the board, where you can decide what users are allowed to put in those shares. Compliance. We're compliant in just about every category: HIPAA, FIPS, GDPR. So we're very big in Europe. We're big in government now as well. HIPAA. Data leak prevention. That's a unique feature that we have, where you can have those files that are very important that people need to see, but you can prevent them from doing downloading, printing, copying, things like that. Office 365, a very big feature that we have that people really love. You can collaborate via MyWorkDrive. You can have direct editing of Office documents. You'll see how slick that is when we do the demo. Edit documents online directly from the browser or mobile client. Again, we'll show that. And how do we work? I'm a sales guy, but I can pretty well, because it's so easy, our architecture. Servers. Here's your existing data, where it lives today. So Windows shares, SMB NAS. Via SMB, the MyWorkDrive server, once you install that and add it to the domain, we see everything over here. And then how do our clients access? Very simply through HTTPS. And so our clients, either desktop, mobile, or browser, via this. So again, the MyWorkDrive server is just a configuration server. Your data stays and exists where it is. All you do is say which shares here you want to share via MyWorkDrive. What are the version 6 features? External guest sharing. We'll talk more about that. New granular share permissions. You'll see that as part of my demo. Multiple domain support, Teams integration, and clustering improvements. So we'll highlight all of that as we go forward. All right, enough of the intro. Let's go right into the demo. And first, I'm going to do the client-side demo. Scott will do the server overview, and then when we do the guest access, Dan will jump in and talk about how that all works. So I'm going to now go here and let's go ahead and do the demo. I like to structure the demo first with the web browser, show you all the components of that access, and then map drive, and then go into mobile. So let's indeed do that. So first off, a little bit about what you're seeing here. This is a Windows 2000, I believe, 16 server running IIS. That's all we need. Generally, 2 core, 4 gigabytes of RAM. It's about as technical as I will get, but just letting you know that. But at this point, I am going to play the client role in everything that we do. So let's go ahead. And I'm going to click here. So this is the URL of the MyWorkDrive server. Notice here, for those that remember Roadrunner, I put that there. And I did that for the purpose of showing you that this is totally customizable. So we have partners that brand us with their partner logo and things like that. And we have end user customers that put their logo there. So you can, and that'll show through on all of our clients when you do that. So let me go here and okay, now you saw me log in with my NT credentials. However, if you're using a SAML single sign-on type product, you could flow through directly with that. In my case, I have that turned off, but when Scott goes into the admin panel, he will show you how that works. What you're looking right here is very interesting. It is not an error. It's invoking or informing the user that we are certain shares have our DLP, data leak prevention, assigned to them. And it's just letting people know that. And literally that means maybe when you're in the office, you can do certain things, read, write, things like that. However, this stuff is pretty proprietary, pretty important. So we'll show it to you when you're accessing remotely, but we'll do some caveats on that. You can't print it, can't copy it, can't change it. And you'll see that in our viewer when we get going. So my user is when admin. If you're someone else, you'll see different shares. So here's demo shared. This is what I am allowed to see. So let's just go here. At this point, I always like to say training is not an issue. People say, well, do you provide training when we first have general discussions? But once we do this and they see how easy it is, I've never in my 3 years been asked, could we do a training session? So I just clicked on this. You can see this. I like to call it a directory type listing because nothing's gone down to whatever device is accessing this. It's just a listing. It's kind of the beauty of what we do. We are not sync and share. We're direct access to those files where they live in the share. So we'll just kind of hover over a few things. So we have a built-in viewer where you can see all kinds of different file types. I think it's in the high 60s of file types, pretty much everything. And if you need a file that is not an Office file or a PDF or a text file, you may want to download that, operate it, and put it back, or use our map drive. And we'll get into that in a few minutes. So let's go right here and just show you everything in action. If you remember on the slide deck, I showed Office 365 integration. It's very, very easy. We have people that say, oh yeah, we use Office 365, but it's kind of hard for our users to understand. Not the way we do it. You just double click on the document, it goes right here and brings the document to the browser. Since Microsoft recognizes us as a cloud storage provider, it does not get parked anywhere, not even temporarily. So that it's very nice when you have like financial institutions, governments, things like that. They say we cannot have that file leave where it lives even temporarily. That's why we're compliant so much. So I am an Office 365 user. I clicked on edit and you can see that I am now actually in Office 365, and let's just call this demo. And notice when I did that right away, my keystrokes were recorded right back to that network share. The user does not need to say, oh, I need to save this before I close this window. It happens automatically. Now, if Dan and Scott, who are on the call here with me, were to make changes, if they had the permissions, you would see a little toast that says Scott's here, Dan's here, and the different changes. So it's true collaboration, 100% functionality of Office 365. So let me, hopefully that's pretty clear. And there we go. So that's how the Office 365 information works. A lot of our customers say, we're transitioning, but we have some people on the old Office, some people, local Office, some people on Office 365. So we're not there quite yet. Well, fear not. We have the ability to edit documents locally if you have Office 365 on that desktop or laptop. So if I click here, it will open up the document in the local version of Office. And you can also in the configuration file say double click will always do that rather than have to click that way. So we, our largest customer actually, migrated like 20,000 people from Office 365 local to in the cloud this way. So let's go here and talk about a little bit about our data leak prevention. So notice here, it's exactly, I'm pointing to the same share, and in all likelihood, you would not DLP a share and let people have full access. So keep that in mind. So you saw me when I double clicked, open it up in Office 365. Now with our data leak prevention applied, I'll just shrink this down a little bit. Notice what we do. So we did not change the inherent file. It's still in that network share exactly the way it is, but we've brought it to our viewer, and we're date and time stamping. You can choose to show these or not, but we're logging all of this. I cannot file print. I cannot file copy, save, edit, things like that. And again, this is when we say we're compliant, this is a big piece on why we are compliant. Yes, we're letting people have access, but we're letting them know we know who they are, and we've got this all over it. So that's at a very high level. That's how our data leak prevention works. And let's see if there's a couple other things I will show just before we jump over to the map drive. And let's get that same document. Now with my permissions, I am allowed to delete, cut, copy, edit, share, do all of these things. Someone else who may have different permissions, underlying NTFS permissions, may, so this is it's kind of floating, where depending on your permissions, some may see all of this, some may not. Excuse me. So here, this is worth talking about. Sharing internally I can do. I can share via OneDrive, and I can share via Outlook Online. Now, when you add us to the domain, all the users on that domain have direct access to MyWorkDrive. But what if you need to collaborate on a document with a third party? You can certainly do that, share via OneDrive. So the initiator can share that out, do your collaboration, and only that person who shared it out would be able to put it back. And then again, the same thing with share via Outlook Online. And now, before we go, I should spend a minute on this guest share. So what we've added since that, we've had requests from people saying, well, what if we need to collaborate with a partner or external organization, and we have a share dedicated to them? Well, that's where we have taken Microsoft's B2B functionality and allowed the admin in MyWorkDrive to create access to a share to people via just an email address. And that's about as far as I can go with that, but you'll be able to invite other organizations to share. Scott and Dan will talk more about that when I get done, but that's a version 6 capability. So let's go now. Dan, Scott, anything I missed on anything you think I should highlight?
No, looks great, Rick.
Thank you. Okay, so let's now go to here. I'll just go like this, and here's my File Explorer, right? So I like to call this pre-MyWorkDrive. I've got a C, a D, an E, and a Z. Now, again, this would be pre-MyWorkDrive. This client machine does not know anything about it, desktop, laptop, whatever. Don't know anything about MyWorkDrive. Now, what I like to do is say, okay, here is. Now, this is an installable that would go on the machine. That desktop, it could be silent install, where you could just do that if somebody turns their machine on the next day. And here you go. This is our client. Well, here's that same URL, and here's the credentials. Notice that it says map at startup. So again, and I purposely didn't do that so I could show you that. But if that was on there and someone did a silent install, next day when somebody comes in, they would just automatically, this would happen as you see when I click on login. Let's go and do that.
That supports SAML as well, too.
Right. Thank you. So here we go. C, D, E, G. Notice this has grown, this list. Now the user doesn't know that these were local and this was this. These are my WorkDrive. They just now have access. There is my demo share. Okay, now I'm going to click on that market definition doc. There we go. I must have been unclick happy, whatever. So notice it opens up pretty responsive. So the market, here's that market definition doc we opened earlier. Here it says demo. I will now call this /webinar. Okay, so now this is acting exactly as you would expect, right? Save. So now that's saved out. There's our little save bar, and it's now been saved right back. The interesting thing was this file we worked on it, and it actually was it was cached. It was not in. We actually didn't download it. We've had people say, well, yeah, you had to download it first. The answer is no. We're just accessing it, which is very interesting. The other thing that we do that is different in the MapDrive client is the let's say that this person has an Office 365 account, but does not have local Office. Well, I guess they can't use the MapDrive. Well, actually they can. You can tell at install time when you're installing the client, it says optionally, do you want to open these Office documents in Office 365 online? And you check that box, and then our client will, from there on out, when you click on this document, rather than opening it up locally, it would open up an Office 365. That's kind of nice, especially for the customer I mentioned earlier that transitioned from local Office to that. It was a very easy transition. So that, I believe that covers everything we need on the MapDrive. Let's real quick talk about mobile. And rather than hook up my iPad and take the time to do that, I've taken screen captures, which will show you exactly the same thing. So we have mobile for both Apple, iOS and Android. And I'm just going to walk you through the interface here. So we support mobile SAML ADFS Login. And here's that demo share we looked at. We've been told this is a very nice client. People think it's very well done. So there is that demo share. You can choose to show a list or a preview at the user level. And so if I were to tap on that market definition doc, there it is. Obviously, it's a screen capture, so you're not going to see what I had earlier. But there it is. Maybe I just need to see it, and that's fine. Close the client. I'm done. Or maybe someone's called me and says, "Oh, can you email me that document?" I can do it from my my phone or my tablet, whatever I have with me. And there it is as an attachment. Keep in mind, I can only do this if I'm allowed to do it based on my underlying NTFS permissions. Maybe I need to do some light editing. So I can do that, open it up with Word, do my light editing, go for it. And then again, maybe I need to, now I can email it out, or maybe I just had a thought in my head and I wanted to do it while I remembered it. Now, in the unlikely event that you are going to be offline for some time, in today's world, most everybody's online all the time, but in the event you're going to be on Southwest Airlines and have iffy internet the whole time and you want to work on something, you can save it offline to your device. There you go, you downloaded it, and you'll see now that it's in our download folder, and there it is for accessibility when you're offline. And then you edit your document and put it back when you're done. Here's an example of my insurance ID cards that I was able to save back to my WorkDrive from that mobile device. And there it is. It says, okay, where do you want to put it? In this case, I chose completed forms and put it there. And very interesting now. So that was our client. and let's say, well, you know what, we're locked down, we can't load your client. So okay, well, we work with Office specifically as well. They changed this. This a little bit of an older slide. This is now called Add Storage, but you would see that. Notice that when you go to Add Storage, there's MyWorkDrive showing up. So you could actually from Office have this experience. Everything that you saw we had earlier. So it's not using our client, it is just using the functionality within Office. So that's really two ways. Think about it now. The third way would be the browser. Let's say you have just the browser, or you need to really quickly make an edit on a friend's iPad who's next to you. Say, hey, can I use this for a minute? Go to the URL, go to the browser, have all the functionality you saw earlier when we first started. And then just an example here to finish up. With the here's PDF Expert, here's Slack. So these applications are loaded on the iOS device, and I can actually edit a file that's in my WorkDrive, a PDF if it's fillable, store Slack conversations, things like that. So just that's a high level overview of how our mobile client works. Okay, lastly, I'm going to now start up Teams. So here's Teams starting up, and let's see here. I think I'll make it just a little bigger for you. So what did I do? I created a project and just called it General, and I notice here's a tab called MyWorkDrive. Well, I told it to point to my guest share in MyWorkDrive. And so this is a pointer to all those files that live in MyWorkDrive. So you can create projects, point them to shares, network shares that have to do with that project, and let's just say, here's that, just pick a file. Here's an executive summary document. I can upload it, download it, delete it, share internally. So I can use the files without moving them actually to Teams. I can access them, and I can create a link if I just do this view, I can do all of that. But I could, if I want to share it internally, here it goes. It created a link to the clipboard, and I can share it that way as well. So the Teams integration is very nice. People have asked for that, and that's, again, a new thing in version 6. Okay, let's go back to, here we are, client-side demo. I am now ready to hand it off to Scott for him to do the server overview. And take it away, Scott.
Sure, thanks, Rick. One distinction I'll make, or one point I'll make on that Teams client, our Teams client is available in the Teams store. So when you click that plus button up there on the top of that screen, you would just get the ability to pick MyWorkDrive from the Teams store, and then, as Rick said, configure it with whatever server and share you need using that same login sort of process as you saw him use on the web client and the Map Drive and mobile. Server side of things, as Rick mentioned, 2016 or higher server, bare minimum requirements, a couple of cores, 4 gig of RAM. Obviously, what your ultimate capacity needs are going to vary by organization. There's actually a guide for that. I'll show you that here in a minute. If you're a new customer who's never used MyWorkDrive before, I would definitely start off on our support page. Just go to myworkdrive.com, click on support, and then scroll down here past the little search box and hit the server guide. We've written a pretty extensive guide on basically how to get going, all the way from really where we are right this moment, what do I even need to have, down through, how do I set up shares, how do I provision users, how do I get this thing online, all that kind of stuff. So this is a very important resource, as are the number of other resources in our support site, which I'll touch on as we go through the demo. Once you have a server running, you're just going to go to the downloads link. You're going to scroll down here to server. You're going to download this. Again, if you're new, if you've been here before, you'll be familiar with the whole login and download. If you're new, Rick generally will help you through this process, or anyone at support. If you ever have any questions, just email us, support@MyWorkDrive, or follow the link on the support page to our support portal. Once you get the server software installed, you'll have the MyWorkDrive control panel. If you run that, you'll have a link to the admin panel. And this is actually, I meant to force a login here, so let me log out and I'll show you how login works. You can log in as this page denotes with any domain administrator, obviously, who has permission to this machine. MyWorkDrive, one of the important security features of MyWorkDrive is we don't have any database of users. We don't have any database of your shares, of your files. We don't keep that kind of information. We do real-time lookups against SMB and LDAP to basically know what to present. So there's no special username for this. You don't need to know anything from us. Just log in with a domain admin. The first time you log in, you'll actually get our wizard. Our wizard is going to walk you through, as the steps here across the top of the screen say, adding a share, provisioning users, making that available on the internet. There's a couple small things to do at the end and then finish. You only need to go through this process once. You actually have the ability to skip it if you're an existing user setting up like a second server, cluster member, or something to that effect. But the first thing you want to do is, and this is again, all step through in the server guide, is add a share. So when you come on this screen, you click new. Existing customers, this is going to start to look fairly familiar, but there's a couple important things in here I want to show you that's new. One of them, Rick mentioned the provisioning of granular permissions. So obviously a name, this needs to be a name that is familiar to the user because they're going to see this when they're in their clients. So this is probably going to be the share name from SMB. And a network path. And I've got DLP enabled on this server, so you'll want to turn these things on, which you'll notice added a few rows to our granular permissions. We'll probably turn those on, and then we're going to modify them in our granular permissions. You're going to import your users. This is doing a lookup right now, as I mentioned, LDAP and SMB, figure out who and what groups that exist on this share. Important consideration for MyWorkDrive is our goal is to be zero duplicate administration. We want you to set up MyWorkDrive once. We want you to make the majority of your changes, modifications to user permissions from Active Directory. Don't want to be another burden to you. We understand that the resource allocation of system administrators and the fact that there's no time. So I've done the import. It's shown me who's available here. Now, this is another one of those important security features that you talk about. You're talk about security features till you're bored of hearing it. But this is an important element in that MyWorkDrive gives you the ability to choose what the user has access to. It's not like being on the network and being able to browse to anything, whether or not, I can see it or not. No, we give you absolute control over what a user can see, down to what client they can use for what user group. So I may look at the share and say, nobody in my second domain, one of the things Rick mentioned is a new feature is the ability to better handle multiple domains. Nobody in my second domain needs to have this at all. Let me just remove it. And none of my administrators should be accessing this via the MapDrive client. So let's just remove it, right? So you can make these kind of changes. Another thing that Rick mentioned was you probably wouldn't have two shares for DLP because that is some of our existing clients. That is how we used to recommend that you provision it. Now with granular permissions, you can actually turn those elements on, the ability to download, the ability on Office Online within the share itself. So if I want, everybody, if I don't want the regular user community to be able to download or use Office Online with this share, I'll turn them off. And you'll notice that also turned off the MapDrive. That's because we don't yet have DLP functionality in the MapDrive client. We've had it in the Windows client for a long time. Some of you more recent users will know that we added DLP to the mobile client in 5.4.3, and DLP in the installed clients for Mac and PC is on our roadmap, which Dan's going to touch on towards the end of the call, or at the end of this presentation. So I've done what I want with this. I'll go ahead and save it out. One last step. I already had this share. Important security note. You can't add a share more than once. So I already had this share set up, which is fine. Once you've added the share, you'll need to add a drive letter to it. That's, again, one of those security features we talk about is the ability to use or not use drive letters, which makes things available or not in the MapDrive client. If I save right now, you'll notice this user wildcard home folder doesn't have a drive letter on it. When I save, I'll get a warning that share is not going to appear. That's not an error. It's just a message to you letting you know that's how we've done our configuration. Once you have a share, the next thing you need to do is make MyWorkDrive available to your users on the internet. MyWorkDrive, as Rick mentioned, is an IIS website. So you can imagine there's a number of ways to make that available. Far and away the easiest one is over here at the top of settings, and that is our Cloud Web Connector. This is our built-in reverse proxy system. It leverages the power of Cloudflare. All you need to do is pick a a site name or a host name on our myworkdrive.net domain. Give us an email address. That's just to let you know when it's ready, so you don't have to sit here and click refresh and save. And your site will be available on that address in a couple of minutes. Your users can log in. Now, that's great from a testing standpoint, from a limited use standpoint, but as this little blue ribbon notes, you do have a file size limit along with that. So of course, there are other ways to set this up, and they're noted down here as you run through the setup guide about making it available. Publishing to the cloud, you can use the Cloud Web Connector, as I mentioned. You can also do it with your own host name, set up a host name on DNS, add a DNS entry, add an SSL certificate, open and map that port 443, and then you can put MyWorkDrive on any name you want. We also support putting it behind a load balancer or in a cluster or in a WAP. And if you actually go to didn't mean to click on that, sorry. If you go to in the support docs, you can actually search for, like network diagrams. You can see some of my pre-filled searches that I've done before. If you just search on this, one of the options that will come up is our typical network deployment. And you can see the various options, the things that are common, that sort of just plain Jane map it through a firewall with a port, but you can get behind a WAP, load balancer, failover, etc. So a bunch of options there as far as how you want to make it available. Beyond simply making it available, there's a host of other features and settings in here. I don't want to take your time to go through all of them, but it's important to note a lot of these come around that concept of improve and enhance security, the ability to turn on and off the different clients. As Rick mentioned, the ability to set up and allow or a block list to specifically permit or deny file types. That new Teams client is on here. The ability, if you don't want people using that, just turn it off, things of that nature. And then new in 6 is the ability to enable or disable the actual built-in search functionality. So if you're not enabling search on your shares, you can just turn that off, things of that nature. Now, Dan and Rick both touched on the fact that we support SAML logins. That's part of our enterprise functionality. So clients with an enterprise license or higher, you get the ability to enable SAML. We have pre-configured a number of different options. ADFS, Azure AD, Okta with Login. You'll see on those that the setup tends to be on the MyWorkDrive side very simple. You drop in the metadata URL and you choose, you may adjust your service provider name or whether you want to require things or not. And that's really all there is to it. There's a little bit of setup on the identity provider side as you need to give it the URL to your MyWorkDrive server and things of that nature, but kind of over harping on our support docs. But if you come over here and simply just look for SSO, you'll find that we've written articles on setting it up with one login, Azure, Okta, ADFS, and of course that manual configuration. If you're not using one of the options in our list, that's fine. We certainly support that. Oops, I meant to pick manual. You just have to edit the configuration files directly in the XML. It's actually really easy. We have pretty good documentation on that. I'll just walk you through how to do it all. And we've had clients set up all kinds of things like Ping Identity and Google and a couple others. So if you're not using an SSO, let me actually put that back because I don't want to change my server. If you're not using an SSO, you want to use legacy two-factor authentication with your username and password. We have a built-in implementation with Duo. Again, information in our support site. If you're using a multi-factor within your SSO, you've got set up for a text response or an authenticator or a code or a key, you don't need to enable two-factor in MyWorkDrive. MyWorkDrive doesn't need to do anything about that. Set that up through your SSO. As your users will proceed just like they do for all your other applications, it'll be a native experience. Or as Rick mentioned, they're already be authenticated. They just click on login and they just get logged in because they're already there. DLP is an optional feature. You don't have to use it. I happen to have it turned on. You saw how that works over on shares. That watermark text that Rick had around the Acme Corporation was defined here. And down at the bottom of this, Rick mentioned that it's brandable. There's branding as well as the ability to modify a whole suite of features in the colors of your web client. On for enterprise, new in version 6, clustering. those of you who've been with us for a while or read any of our older documentation will know we've always supported clustering, but it's been a more manual process where you've used the export import feature at the bottom of settings to manually move configuration files over. And then you have a little bit of duplicate administration as you had to make changes. If you change things on one server, you had to change them on all the members of the nodes, all the node members. With 6, you no longer need to do that. You simply enable clustering. The very first server you set up will define as primary. You'll set a location. This is typically we just set it by default as to where it is on this existing server, but typically this will be a UNC path to a hidden share on something that all the servers call your MyWorkDrive servers can access. Once you've done that, then all of these settings will gray out on your secondary servers, and you'll do all your administration on your primary server. So really, again, speaking to that respect of system administrators' time and a goal to avoid duplicate administration. This feature does require all of the servers in your environment to be running version 6 or higher. So this won't even show up unless you specifically contact Rick and you're an enterprise customer running, I think 200 users or more. You can contact Rick and he'll give you an updated license or update your license to support clustering. We did that on purpose to make sure that no one accidentally breaks a server running on an older version, and that licensing doesn't support older servers. The last two things, actually don't want to enable clustering on this server, so I'm gonna turn that back off. The last two things I'll talk about are our alerts and our logs. And let me actually do that backwards. Let me talk about what our logging does. So our logging, we log everything to text files on the file system. A lot of customers, particularly large enterprise customers, won't use our logging or alerts because you'll want to take these logs into a log reader program of some type, Elk, Splunk, Sumo, etc. So know that these files are logs on the file system. You can drop a log aggregator on the server, port those logs over, or share the log file path, have it pick it up UBC or UNC rather, however you want to do that. So if you're doing that, you may not need to use this functionality, but it's here. You can get in, see the log, see what people have done, logins, reads, writes, log offs, what kind of client user, all that kind of fun stuff. They're searchable. I can search for a keyword like login. I can then export these and dump these out to Excel or take them off into some other application, write reports, do whatever I want to. Alerting is built on logs, and what alerting does is sends an email. You'll see down here my SMTP configuration to send an email to myself when certain thresholds are met by users. A number of files is downloaded in a number of minutes, and how often these alerts are sent. These are adjustable, right? I might only want to get alerts every 10 minutes. I may only want to know about deleted files every 10 minutes. I can make those adjustments. They can be different. There are minimums, so you'll find that if you use the GUI, you can't change below or above certain amounts. But this gives you the ability to just be warned when users have questionable activity. Is someone making a mistake and moving a bunch of files? Does someone's machine potentially have a backup issue running where it's deleting files, or a sync issue running where it's deleting files it shouldn't, or could it even be malware, right? We want to give you the ability to know about those things. I said again via email. You might not require this. You might be using this in somewhere else. But that's the idea behind the server software. Again, there's two final points before I turn it back over to Rick for the balance of the demo. We've written a ton of documentation. You can see just on this one search, I limited out to the search view. There's a ton of documentation on our support site. So if you have questions, certainly that's an excellent resource. Also, if you need help, there's a link to getting to our help desk portal to ask the support team questions. If there's something in the documentation you don't understand, there's something you don't think is covered, you can't find something in the documentation, email us. We'll be happy to point it out to you. Fill out a form. Or again, you can email us. It's just simply support at MyWorkDrive, and we are always happy to help. Gentlemen, anything you think I missed in the server?
Nope, I think you nailed it.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing. I'll let you pick it back up, Rick, and you guys can finish the balance of the demo.
Alrighty, here we go. I will share. And we'll go here. All right, my easy part now is Dan will talk about guest user access. So Dan, if you want to take that away, I'll start the slide deck, take you right down to there.
Okay, thanks, Rick. Yeah, so guest user folder sharing. So this is a little bit different than what you would expect in a traditional way. As you note, that we're not moving files as Rick talked about. There's living on existing SMB shares. So creating like a traditional link sharing type of system would not be good from a security perspective, because we've seen competitors where they have one root account that has permission to all shares, which if that gets hijacked, then it becomes a big security issue. But even just renaming folders and files could break those links. So in order to be able to do true collaboration in a secure way, what we did is we created a guest user folder sharing option. So what that does is, if you had some files that you didn't want to just share with OneDrive, and make them available publicly, but actually wanted to collaborate with other users, then you can use our guest user folder sharing. And what that does is it actually sends an invitation to the user via email. If they have an Azure AD account on that email address already, they could just use that. Otherwise, they'll be prompted to set that up. And then at that point, the user will be authenticated and be able to access the shares. Now that sounds real simple, but there's obviously some things in the back end to actually make that happen. And you're wondering, well, gee, how actually does that work? Microsoft has a whole article that we've linked at the bottom of this page here that's on our support article that talks about that. The main differentiator here is that the administrator won't need to manage the guest users' logins, passwords, or authentication, because that is still being done by Microsoft Azure AD as the identity provider. So there'll be a dummy account created in your local Active Directory and an OU that you specify that the user actually can never log into. It's actually locked out from that happening, but that gives the MyWorkDrive server the ability to impersonate that user after Microsoft Azure AD has authenticated them and be able to give them access to that guest share. And that can be done on the same MyWorkDrive server that you have your regular users use, or you can work with Rick and we can license you for a separate server that's dedicated just for guest user folder sharing. Yeah, so here's what you would see from an end user perspective when they get the email. This is what it would look like. They will actually have the ability to click this and accept the invitation. What that will then do is add that user as a guest to your Azure AD. Again, you can even also set up an Azure AD specifically for guest sharing. Does not have to be the same as your Active Directory that you use for your internal users. You can dedicate one. You can even use the free version of Azure AD to be able to do this, so that you can then separate those users off. But this is what the end user would see. It's that simple. They click on it and then they'll be logging in using our Azure AD SAML authentication. And you can see here just a little bit about how it actually lays out. So as I mentioned, you got your Windows file shares, you've got Active Directory. The guest user is impersonated. So we've got user at guestdomain.com. We actually have an account that gets created in your Active Directory and a special OU that has locked down so they can never log into it. They actually, that user then has permissions to those shares and folders that you want them to be able to see. And then you have the MyWorkDrive server, of course, on the left that then is talking to Azure AD up in the top left as the identity provider for SAML guest user authentication. From the end user standpoint, on the PC, tablet, mobile, there's no difference. It's just like an internal user. They would just, however, only see the access to shares that you would want them to see. And from a MyWorkDrive server perspective, we've made it as easy as possible so that you can designate a share for this purpose, invite the user and specify the groups, and it'll automatically create what would have been a very tedious manual process. It automates 90% of that. So that's, I encourage you to take a look at the document in terms of guest sharing, and that gives you kind of a rough idea. We actually even have a complete video on how to set that up. That's also there as well. So take a look at that, and that gives a really good overview on how that works. Some things that are coming up, as Scott mentioned, we're going to be having a DLP in the map drive. We've already added DLP into the mobile client and the web client. When we say DLP, we mean data leak prevention with that encrypted view that Rick was showing. So they'll be able to look at those folders and files just like they would with a regular map drive, but they won't have the ability to be able to download those files. They would then double click on them and be able to access them using the RV encrypted viewer where they're not able to download the files. But from a user experience, they don't have to then jump to the browser, log in, and they can kind of do it in a seamless way side by side with regular shares where they are able to do downloads. So it saves them a lot of time and gives them that user-friendly experience so they don't need additional training to be able to do that. We're going to be adding a whole bunch of extra protection for DLP. On top of that, we're going to be adding ransomware protection. And when we talk about that, we're talking about, we already have alerts that you can set. For example, if 100 files got modified in 5 minutes that Scott showed, we'll be adding some features for that to be able to let you lock that user out, make them re-authenticate in order to prove their identity because based on a suspicious activity such as that. And we'll be also looking at the ability to lock down what applications can access the map drive so that you can say, oh, well, I only want Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Adobe PDF to be able to actually access the map drive. So in that case, instead of using a VPN that allows anybody and everything to be able to do anything on your shares, you'll be building on the stuff that you already have in MyWorkDrive of be able to block extensions and send alerts, but now you can actually block actual activity. You can lock the user out. You can make them re-authenticate. So the need for having device management becomes less, but we will also be adding more support for device management as well, especially with Azure AD application proxy. That's gives the ability for people to do pre-auth for identity providers. So that'll be the first one that we'll be adding to all of our clients, because we're seeing a lot of customers, rather than having to manage a separate device management tool, they want to use their identity provider for that. And one of the ways to do that is Azure AD application proxy, where you can basically say, I don't want the MyWorkDrive server to be exposed at all. I need the user to log into Azure AD first before they can even talk to it, to even find out how to even start talking to the MyWorkDrive server. So we'll be doing that, and that with those kinds of policies, customers can tie that into Intune and be able to identify devices and decide right from there whether that device is under management and they want to allow them to be able to access MyWorkDrive. So then there's no need to have a device management on the MyWorkDrive side at all. We will be still adding some device registration features and management into the MyWorkDrive server to allow customers to be able to view and potentially block and allow users as we move forward in the next couple of sprints. And that's it for the major roadmap features on my side.
Great. All right. Wow, you think we've done this before? We're at about 56 minutes into this. So great. We like to keep it under an hour. So let's finish up. Thank you, Dan, for doing that overview, by the way. Questions about MyWorkDrive? Here's all the information. Sales at MyWorkDrive. Anything that would go directly to me. And feel free to reach out at any time. Log on, as we showed earlier. You can do a trial. And be very happy to answer any questions you may have. So I'd like to thank you for accessing this webinar. Hopefully it highlights everything that's in our latest and greatest release. And thank you for listening.